you juggle so many different things, and you're releasing a new book called Sis Take a Breath, which I just love that title, because just even reading that, I'm like, oh, okay, I have permission to breathe for a second, which I think we all need as women, as moms. So tell me why you wrote this book and what inspired it.
What's funny is that I never wanted to write a book. I've never in a million years did I think this would be something the Lord would lead me in. But, I'm learning more and more the more I just lean in and say yes. And I'm obedient to things. God has awesome fruit on the other end of it. So really, it was just a matter of, a lot of life. I say a lot because it felt like when we were in the NFL, the years are different. Now that we're out, I feel they were like condensed years, but packed full of things because the season is so intense. And around that and moving and meeting new people, it was really 16 years of life. That was kind of crazy. Goods, bads, highs, and lows. And I think through that, God was just showing me a bunch of things about life and what was important, and how much we really don't know what tomorrow holds. And what I found myself doing is kind of like not breathing. I mean, literally breathing, but just kind of going to the next thing, always rushing. We were so much that I was responsible for. And I was like, have I remembered any of this? Like, have I enjoyed any of this? Have I stopped to think in any time, what is God showing me? What is he teaching me? Or am I just so worried about the next thing that I'm going through life and not realizing that there is so much that I may be missing? And so I think with the book, it gave me an opportunity to look back and reflect on the things that I do feel like God was teaching me. And a lot of it was when I was calm in either whether it was a good time or a bad time, like I was really growing. And that's really what you want. And I think I want more of that. And so the book is really for me as much as it is for other moms and women. It's just, gosh, we have so much that God has given us every day. And I think sometimes we're rushing through it and we're not really realizing all that it has to offer. So that's why the Sis Take a Breath is like just the pause in life and say, God, okay, here I am. This is too much, or this is really great, or whatever you're feeling in that moment. And it's just like, take a breath in that, because there's something really good to be learned.
Yeah. This idea is kind of countercultural though, because we don't live in a society where this is encouraged. We hear, be present, but everything else is telling us achieve, pursue your dream, be the best mom, be the best housewife, everything. So practically on just a day-to-day basis, how can we pause? What are some little things we can do during the day when it's most of the time just so crazy?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that I do daily that have become more habit. One is even before I get out of bed, I always say to the Lord, I'm like, Lord, this is all I got. Like I'm either, we're coming off a state track meet where we were literally out there for 10 hours on one day and 5 hours the day before, and I am tired. And so there's mornings where I get up and I'm like, I don't think I have what it takes, like to get through everything that has to happen. Like, Lord, give me my manna for the day. I know you've provided it before. Help me reflect on times where I felt this way before and I've made it through. And Lord, I'm coming with, this is all I got. And my fish and my bread, like you have got to multiply this. And it just, for me, it sets it off of, takes the pressure off that it's up to me. Because I'm definitely a controlling person. I like to know how things are moving. I mean, we have 7 kids. I kind of have to like steer the ship, feels like. So I feel like starting my day just recognizing that it's not up to me, that I really need the Spirit to guide me, to watch my tongue, to help me determine what's important and what's not, helps me. And that's something that literally before I get out of bed, I'm like, okay, God. And I mean, it sounds different every morning depending on, whatever state I'm in, but there's definitely a moment of, you gotta carry me today, because I'm not going to be able to do this. And then it's also being in my word. When I talk about breathing in, I'm not just breathing anything. It's like I'm breathing in whatever truth I need at that moment. So if I have an idea of how the day is supposed to go and something like, I end up with a flat tire, I'm like, this was definitely not part of my plan. And so the breath is like, okay, what truth do I need, Lord? And it's like his truth that I'm breathing in. And then I don't breathe out like everything is fine and dandy, but I'm like, okay, let's do it. It's just a different mindset. And so I think that happens for me all the time. It's not once a day. It is constantly like, I'm potty training twins right now. I need a lot of breath because
Yes, you
they're
do.
not listening to me. And so it really just is, it's become more natural the more I'm abiding in my word. And I'm asking God to constantly show me like the areas of my life that he either wants to like refine, or the areas of my life he's like, oh, you need me here. And that is happening really constantly. And so I think the nuggets of what do you take and how do I do this is really like, not, I think about prayer. Like at one point I thought prayer was like at certain times of day, and it talks about praying continuously, never ceasing. I'm like, what does that even look like? But it really is just this ongoing inner conversation that I'm having. Even before, talking to you, I'm like, okay, Lord, like, I have no idea what I'm going to say. Like, I don't know, and it's like, you've got to really be before me. And just at the end of things, really, at the end of the day saying, Lord, you did it again. Like, it wasn't pretty. I need to go apologize to my kids for where I went left and I should have gone right. But Lord, you sustained me and you kept me going, and you're going to do it again. And you have shown me that you are faithful. And so it's just that constant talking that I think we've got to be better at, blocking out the noise and listening to the one that gives us life.
I love that idea of blocking out the noise, because once again, with social media, especially, we don't really live in a society where that's easy to do. So talk about how moms, especially and women, can show ourselves grace in the face of pressure when we do mess up, and sort of avoid falling into this social media comparison trap that I think we're all susceptible to.
Yeah, well, that's really hard. And I think it's an individual thing. So I think some of us can be on social media and it not really affect us very much. Like we can compartmentalize, like this is somebody's highlight reel. I can compartmentalize how this person has been like had professional makeup. We can figure those things out and enter into that in a way that's safe and okay for our hearts. And some of us can't. I tend to lean on the I can't part because it becomes, comparison is a stealer of joy. That's for sure. And I always tell people, like, you see something that you like and you wish you had it. And there's a couple things that happen. You have to realize that you may not want that person's complete story, right? Like the part that you see is the part that you want, but you may not want the story that led up to where they are. And I also say, man, God's given me my own lane. He's given me my journey, my husband, my kids, my story. And it's like, I want to do my story well. And it's very hard to do my story well if I'm always comparing and contrasting and, having all these other voices telling me about my story. And so I think the way we do it as women is to know what you're able to handle, but always going back to truth. If we go back to the world to validate or to speak life into us, our road will be it'll be a lot of highs and a lot of lows. And it won't be, we'll have a hard time staying consistent in the truth. But when we go to God with who we are, God to who our identity is and how we are mothering and how we are as a wife, the message is always very consistent. And so I guess my advice would be to individually know that you don't have to be on those platforms all the time, to limit those if you're a person who walks away or gets off of that and feels like you're not measuring up. And you have to just really be honest. There's no one size fits all to this, but I do think the Lord it probably has spoken to many of us like, this is too much. This is not edifying to your soul, but there's still something that draws us in. I think we have to take notice individually of what that is, and know when to say yes and when to say no.
Yeah, that's so good. I think it was Bob Goff who once told me, he said something like, God doesn't compare what he creates. So
Right.
keep your eyes on your own paper. And
That's
that's
so
just
good.
always stuck with me because it's so true.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I think that's when we get off key. And here's the encouragement is like, God wants us all to recognize our lane, because our lane is specific. Like no one else can duplicate it. And so if I'm so worried about being in someone else's journey, like the kingdom ultimately misses out, because there is something that each one of us women offer to the kingdom that we miss out on when we're so focused on trying to do somebody else's job. Like we all have a job to do, and the problem is somebody, we just not satisfied with it, when really God is saying, I'm saying I need you, like woman, wherever you are, I need your lane, because your lane, without it, like we're missing out. And so that's always been my encouragement to people, is to not look at other, I mean, yes, there may be some things or tips and tricks or whatever, and to like making your household run smooth, but man, the way you do it, the way God has knit you together in your personality to be on your job, or to in your friend group, or in your home, is so special and unique. And we should be mindful when we're comparing and contrasting, because that really does steal the joy of what we're doing away.
That's so good. And talk about some of the dangers of not taking a breath. Talk about why this is God's best plan for us, because I think sometimes we think, well, I can just go through life that way, without thinking there's actually some really severe ramifications for not doing that. I know that I struggle with that in my own life.
One thing, when we do it on our own, we tend to become our own God, right? We tend to think things are up to us. And yes, some things are. I mean, if I don't make dinner, my kids may not eat. Okay. So there's some, some things that are somewhat obvious, but I think the ramifications of not pausing, and just keep and continuing to go, is that we think we are actually in control. We think that, our word is what's important. And I think we instead of pointing people to God, who is in control, people tend to look to us. And some of that, and that's tiring. I don't think it's sustainable. I think that's why there's burnout in a lot of situations. I think that's why we do look to Instagram, where everything looks perfect, because we know in our heart of hearts that that's not really what's going on. And so in a lot of ways, we feel like we're imposters, right? Like we feel like, I'm just got to make it look good, when really we are worn down and we are tired and we are incapable of doing everything that we're called to do. And so I think that, like, the not having rest and the not being able to breathe is a result of not focusing on who is the one who actually is giving you breath. And I think that's scary. And that is what causes us, it causes so many things. But the first thing I think of, it just causes this idea that, like, I am now God. It is all up to me. And I think that's a dangerous place for believers to be in, because we don't direct the attention back to where it should be.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
Now, you have 7 kids, which I'm one of 7, so I love that. But it is, it can be a scary time to be a parent right now. There's so much coming at us in culture. So what advice or wisdom can you offer parents to raise kids who know and love the Lord in a culture where, frankly, it just seems like it's getting harder to do that?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Fear is a big component of this. Like you'll feel like I'm not doing enough, or maybe I'm not even capable or equipped enough to do what my kids need. And I think that goes back to the earlier question, is like, you aren't capable enough, and there's nothing that you can do. It's like, this is not a 1 + 1 = 2 situation. This is a God equipped me to do what you've called me to do, and you do the rest. Like, there are no guarantees. And I think that is what's scary in our culture now, is because everything, if we do all the right steps, give me the steps to do to have the perfect kid and I'll do them. And God is like, I don't know where you find that in scripture. Like, that's nowhere to be found. That is not how it works. I think we can't give what we don't have. I think a lot of times as parents, we want our kids to be kind. I was just having this conversation. We want our kids to be kind. We want our kids to be honest. We don't want all these things, but we ourselves are empty of those same things and character traits that we want our kids to have. And so we have these lofty goals for our kids, yet we are dying inside and we are, not full of God's grace and mercy and his spirit, but yet we want our kids to be that. And so I think it is scared to be it's scary to be a parent for sure, 100%. But it's also supposed to be really scary to be a believer.
Yeah.
And so it's not supposed to be comfortable. We're not supposed to feel like, hey, everybody's doing this. And so I always say, I don't want to raise a weak Christian, and I don't want to have dull arrows. And so how do I do that? Is I make sure they know that they will be persecuted, make sure that they know they will have trials, make sure that they know that this safe bubble that we want to create for them is not what God has called us to be as disciples and ministers of his word. And so as much as I don't want that for them, I have to understand that that's my life as well. And so my kids will be equipped when they see me standing up for truth, and when they see me speaking out and not going like looking like the world. My kids will be equipped when they see that we make decisions that we know that God has called us to do that are not easy. And so I think the best way for our kids to learn that is for us to follow make the example. If they see us in our word, if they see us, memorizing scripture, if they see us, having Bible studies at our house and serving other people, that is how we change the world, and that is how we are a light. And so I think, devotions are great. I wish I could say we get up at 6 a.m. and we all pray. And, I wish I could say we do those things, but we just do life. And when life happens, we go to the truth about it. If someone's mean at school, yes, I have an opinion about, they shouldn't be mean to my kid. And, the mama bear comes out, but it's like, gosh, what does the Bible say about how you should react? And that might be very different than how the advice that I want to give them from my flesh. Mm-hmm. And so it's always having that communication open with our children. It's about discipling them and where they are right now. And just figuring out what's important. Obviously, scripture memorization, being in the Bible is important. But man, they have to be able to walk that out in 2nd grade where they are, or in 5th grade, or in 6th grade at 6th grade dance, and how they, portray themselves. And all of these things are happening continuously. And we're always just going, like my husband and I are always just going to the Lord, like, are we doing this right, God? Like, do you have any wisdom for us? And so I think it's an ongoing thing. It's like life as it happens, and recognizing that even though we do these things, it doesn't affirm that we will have these people that are on fire for God. That's our hope and that's our prayer. But we know that we can only do what God has given us to do for our people. And so is it scary? Absolutely. But man, that's what we're hopefully preparing them for.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, Kirsten, I know we're almost out of time, but is there anything else you want our readers to know about you or about your new book?
Yes. I think the major takeaway is this book will not have you walk away and feel like you have a to-do list. The idea behind the book is for you and your own journey in your life as a woman, whether that's a friend, a coworker, a mom, a wife, is to really be encouraged in your walk. Be encouraged that we serve a big God that wants to know you, that wants to know you intimately, so intimately that through your breath, he is going to speak to you. And so that's the encouragement in the book. You'll laugh. You may have some, we talk about, miscarriages and things that have happened that we just did not plan for. But just to see that God is always working. He is always sovereign. And we know that we have a lot to do as women. We know that we want our relationships to be healthy. We know that we want the work that we do to matter. And ultimately, we know that we are tired. And none of that we can change. But through our breath and understanding God is with us, man, we can do this journey and we can be encouraged in our day-to-day life. So that's that's really it's the encouragement. It's not the comparison. It's the encouragement to pause and say, God, I know you are making me more into the woman that you would have me to be through all the events that are happening in my life. So thank you for that, and give me the power to be able to do that in a great way.